What's going on, guys? So in this video, we're going to build the FDL 3 full auto tail. Let's go. Alright, so in this video, we're going to start the assembly process of the full auto tail. And there is a semi-auto tail, which I'm not really sure if I'm going to do. If you're interested in that, leave me a comment below. And if there's enough people interested in it, I will do its own build video. In this video, we're going to cover installing a lot of the electronics, building the actual 3D parts, mostly the assembly. And if you see something that is already built, I've probably already covered that in another video, like the control boards are already populated. I've included a link below in the description where I include the playlist. This is one video in a series of videos, and this is actually the 4th video. I'm hoping to complete it in 4. It might be 5. We'll see as we go, because there's a lot of extra information that I want to cover. I want to discuss the flywheels and show you how to print those. And there's a few other things that I want to cover, but that's not going to be in this video, so I'm not going to cover that. So let's go ahead and start this. We're going to start with the hand grip and go from there. For this first step, we're going to want the bill of material calls for an Omron switch, and there's others that are similar. This one's made in Japan, I believe. This is not an Omron. I did manage to pick up the actual Omrons that are part of this build, and they are kind of rare, so I picked up a few of them. The part number you're interested is this V15G6 1C26-K. And you want the snap action hinge roller lever 15 amp quick connect. And what we're going to want with this is we want this lower pin here, and we want the bottom one if we're holding the activator switch up. And the way you can test that is if you have a multimeter, you can pop that guy on and put it into the continuity test mode, and that's denoted by the little speaker icon here. If you connect these two probes, you get a beep. So what you want to do is connect to this bottom pin here and connect to this lower pin here, and you should not get a beep until you hit this button. Just like that. So we know this is good. That's the one we're going to use. And I've tested all these, but clearly we only need one for this build, so the others go away. The other thing that you're going to want is the trigger. And if you'll notice here, it's got a slotted section right there, and it's got another slotted section right there, and then you'll notice it's got this bevel here and a flat side here. So we want that. And then the other thing that we're going to want are these guys. These are the Pololu 1813 pre-crimped wires. This is a 10-pack of 6-inch orange. So grab that, and then also you're going to want these guys. This is the Pololu 1901, and these are the 2.54 millimeter crimp connectors, or 0.1 inch. And we're going to need one of these. And as you can see, I got my jacket on today because it is cold out. The garage is probably 16 degrees right now. That's Fahrenheit. So if I don't get this complete build video done, you'll understand why, or that's at least why. All right, so for this, we're going to want 2 of these wires. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to cut these ends completely off on one side. And the other side we're going to leave together. So these we're going to cut as close to as possible. And then once you're done with that, go ahead and strip these. I'm stripping roughly 1/4 inch off. Okay. That's that. And then there's this guy here. All right, so grab your switch, and if you notice, these are spade connectors, can clip right on here, and ProjectFDL sells this in a way that they use the spade connectors. The ones that I have are automotive spade connectors, and they're not going to fit on this. They're way too big. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm just going to solder directly to these 2 pins. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's not going to be a quick connect type style, but you know, it is what it is. If you want to carry spare parts with you for your FDL, this is easy enough to just make and put on another switch, because if you're replacing the switch, it's not that much extra added effort to yank this wiring out to just do this at one time. So we're just gonna pre-tin these wires quick. For this, I'm using the Hacko FX951, and this is the FM2027 with the T15/D12. This is a 1.2 meter. This is a 1.2 millimeter chisel tip. So just go ahead and pre-tin these wires. Once you do that, grab your switch, and I'm just orientating it so that this is up, and I'm going to hold it with the switch lever here, just like that. And what I'm going to do is just place a bead of solder on the top of each of these terminals here. So I'm just going to lay the wire flat, and I think that's going to be more than ample, because so just a bead of solder there and a bead of solder here. And as I was mentioning, I think I'm just going to leave these wires flat on here. And the reason I feel like that should be ample is because this is going to be placed inside of the switch housing there, or the trigger housing. And it's not going to be moving around once in place. So that should be more than ample. Just go ahead and solder that wire right in place. Try to hold it long enough for that to solidify, and I could definitely tell that these are not silicone coated wires. So as you can see, some of the plastic is melting, and that's what we want there. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do with this is I am going to take a piece of heat shrink and place it over each one of those connections. I'm using, this is roughly a 3/8 inner diameter heat shrink. This is a 3 times heat shrink. I use this stuff because it shrinks down really small. And just place this over your wiring and right over that spade connector. Just like that. Okay. Once that's set, just for good measure, it's a good idea to just check your connections on your wire ends. So go ahead and grab your probes and make sure we got continuity. Okay, next go ahead and grab your pin connector, and we're going to place these wires in there. And these have like a little, it's kind of a little nub. So these have like kind of like a little nub that sticks up. You want that facing up, and then you want to put that into the, there's a large square hole and then a smaller square hole. You want to place this into the large square hole and just place it, press until you get like a nice little audible click. And that's all we need to do. This doesn't matter right or left. because we're just making a connection with these wires. Okay, so now that our switch is complete, go ahead and grab your trigger and your trigger housing. And the way this seats, as you can see, there's a groove there and a groove there, and that coincides with this groove here, and then there's another groove there, and obviously the rounded portion goes forward. And the other way that this sits is we want this beveled edge towards the, if this was a clock, it'd be at 3 o'clock. And to do this, I kind of place it in on both sides, top and bottom there, and then just kind of rock it in place while pulling this and this kind of away from one another, and then it just seats right in place like that. And it should look like that when you're done. Okay, once you've got the trigger in place, we want to go ahead and grab our switch. And you'll notice right here, there's this nice little slot there. There's a hole right here. Grab your crimp connector and put it right into that hole. And depending on how your printer is, this might need a little bit of persuasion. And that's easily enough done with just a tiny screwdriver, and then you can just feed it through. You don't want to mash these wires or anything. You just want to kind of just get it to the point where it pulls through. Mine's snug, it's not bad. Okay, and then that's pulled through just like that. Now this switch will sit right in here. There's a little square opening here. And when you do the heat shrink as far down as I did, you're obviously going to have a little bit of a bending issue with it. Okay, and then that sits nicely right in that slot like that. And as you can see, I just kind of bent this ever so gently through there. And this is just a friction fit. As you can see, the top of this is cut so that you don't need to modify your switch. And then just go ahead and check your trigger, make sure it moves nice and smoothly and that we're activating the switch easily with every press. So the next thing that we want to do is grab your handle scales, your 4x40, this is a 1 3/4 inch machine screw, and a 4x40 nylock. And then we want, these are, I think it's 6x32 by 1/2 inch screw. Now what we're gonna do is grab our scales, and as you can see here, there's 2 screws. One screw is gonna go for each side. And then there's another screw here. This is for our long screw. So what we're gonna do is screw this guy in first. These are a Phillips head. I'm going to turn this with a number 2 Phillips. And these guys, I did not pre-drill or anything like this. This is just a friction fit right into that hole. And just snug it down. Okay, and then flip it over. You're going to repeat the same on the back side, or the right side. Now, if I may make a suggestion, I really feel like the number 2 Phillips is just a pinch too big. Let's try number 1. Yeah, number 1 Phillips is better. Okay, once you got those 2 tightened, go ahead and grab your 4x40 and stick it through this top center hole. And I'm turning this with a 3x32 hex driver. And you want to run this right until it hits the base of the, as you can see, there's a little screw hole there. So So run this screw right to that screw hole, and then you can place your nylock right inside that hex keyed area, and then screw it down tight. Just like that. Once you get that set, just make sure that your switch is still activating, your trigger's moving fine, and enjoy the, oh, that feels good. Okay, so now it feels like we're building something. That's all set. We can put this aside. So for this next part, we want to grab the pusher motor housing. And I don't know how yours printed, but mine printed kind of strange here. As you can see, it's almost like the supports that I have used decided to become part of the model. So for this, there's two different ways that you can get this done that I see. Many of you might have an X-Acto. So I'm going to go with an X-Acto. You could probably drill these out just fine. So I'm just going to trace around with the X-Acto. Be careful not to cut yourself. And that should be ample. We're just putting the front face of the motor through here, and we're going to be putting these screws through here too. So these screws, just spin the X-Acto like that. Don't need to get too crazy because the screws will bite right through that. Okay, so that's cleaned up. This part is ready. So grab that guy, grab your pusher motor. All right, so now what we're gonna do is, because we're building this from the ground up, we're gonna want some wiring. All right, so for this next step, I've got two 22 gauge wires. These are cut to 14 inches, and the bill of material calls for 35 centimeters. I just rounded up. The other thing that here, if you look at the directions that they've posted, you'll see a picture of the pusher motor and the wiring that's attached to it. Usually, you see we get this red mark here. That's usually your positive wire. It appears that they have this going a reverse rotation. So they have the black wire attached to the positive side and the positive wire attached to the ground side. So I'm going to mimic that. My assumption here is that they are having this in a reverse rotation. So what I'm going to do is just place this wire through, fold it over on itself, and then I'm twisting it in place. So again, I'll show you that one more time. So I'm taking the wire, placing it through the through hole, I'm bending it in half, and then I'm twisting both ends together. You notice I did not pre-tin, because once you pre-tin, a maneuver like that is going to be extremely hard to do. So once you get that in place, go ahead and solder them in place. I'm applying some heat to the iron and then placing it on the back side of the work, just like this. Heat there, and then placing it on the opposite side. And then just be careful if you're going to move any of this stuff around, just make sure it solidifies before you go moving your wires. Okay. So that is, all right, so now we have our motor wires attached, and we're going to grab just a bit of shrink tubing just to cover those up. Okay, so I've got my, this is about a 1/8 inch ID shrink tube. Just going to place this on the wiring, and I want to place this all the way over, just covering our pad there. And just like that, straight to the motor. And as this heats up, I'm going to bend this back to one side. Okay, and we're going to go over that. just like that. So there's that. Now we're gonna heat it with some heat. All right, and while those are still hot, go ahead and bend them just like that. As you can see, we have our black lead attached on the red side. We have a red lead attached on the white side, and we want our red lead to the left, and the wire's facing you, just like that. So once that's all set, you can put that aside. We're gonna need that in a second. All right, for this next step, we want to grab these little 3mm, I think these are M3 by 6, and notice the flange head there. These are what we're going to attach our motor with. And these guys, I believe, yeah, and these are going to turn with a 2mm Allen key. So what we want to do with these is we're going to want a little bit of blue Loctite on there because they are going into a motor. So grab your Loctite and grab your pusher motor housing. This guy is going to seat right in here like this, and we're going to line this up, the screws holes like that, and we want our wires to line up with this little wiring track right there. And again, I apologize for printing this in black. There you go. Line it up with this wiring track here. So we're going to screw this in place. And, I'm using like the paste Loctite. You can use the little the liquid if you so choose. This is just what I have. I happen to like working with this stuff a little bit better than that. So go ahead and line that up and run it in place. And with these we want to go snug, but we don't want to deform plastic. And we also want to make sure that it's at least flush with the bottom of this pusher housing here. We don't want anything sticking up. So that's one. Repeat the process for the second. Oops. And try not to lose your screw in the goop. Come on. That's the thing. Okay, snug and snug. All right, I'm gonna clean that up a little bit and get right back. All right, and just because we have it out, I like to just cut a piece of, this is about a 1/4 inch piece of shrink tubing. I think it's about 1/8 inch ID. And I'm gonna put a piece before it enters the track, and then I place them probably every 5 inches from there. So it's just a total of 3 pieces, and then the end will be pinned together with a crimp connector. So just go ahead and do that. It cleans up your wiring, makes things easier. Once you get that all set, go ahead and feed this wire into the track, taking care not to pinch it or to break the coating. Okay, so once you get that, go ahead and run your wiring through this little crimp section, just like that. You don't need to get too crazy. What you don't want to do is crimp anything, and you want to make sure that it's just run flush, flat. So now that that's all set, we want to go ahead and grab the other end of our motor wires, and we're going to pull off roughly, I go with about 3/16 of an inch here. and you can go down to maybe an 1/8 inch, so an 1/8 to 3/16, something like that. We're not going to pre-tin these, we're just going to spin the ends just like that. Okay, so the next thing that we want is our JST connector, and this is a Pololu 1934 JST RCY connector. So we want to grab one of these connectors here, and we want to grab this guy here. You'll notice each of these connectors are placed on a piece of flashing. This flashing is going to be your friend for this next part. So what you want to do here is cut this right in between the rectangle where I've marked it here. And we're going to cut 2 of these, one for the positive, one for the negative. Just like that. Okay, so for this part I'm going to use, this is a iWeiss crimper. And as you can see from the end here, we've got 28 through 24, 22 through 20, and 20 through 18. We're going to use this center housing here. And if you look, if I hold it like this, you'll see there's 2 humps right there, and then there's like a bottom concave section. The 2 humps is where we want the crimp connector to go. So if I can show you, let's see if I can do this here. Come on, focus. Okay. So the way we want to orientate this inside of this clipper is just like this, with the open side up. And let me show you just how this connector looks here. Okay, so on this connector, there's a bunch of portions to pay attention to. And let me grab a pointer here. So when we're looking at this connector, we have a few different parts here. This is what's going to keep it inside of the housing. Then we have this side here that crimps, and then we have this side here that crimps. So when we orientate this inside of the crimper, we're going to have our wire jacket is going to come into about here, and then our wire is going to go to about here, and then be crimped with the secondary one. The reason I say this flashing is going to be your friend is because this is how we're going to align it inside of the crimp tool. Now this is a ratchet and crimp tool. So what you want to do is open it up, and we're going to place this with the crimp side up. Okay, so just like that. Okay, and then that crimp side, there you go. So this is how we're going to put it. As you can see, that crimp side goes up towards that double mountain area. And the reason that happens is because that double mountain area is going to roll the crimp section into the wire. And the reason that this is a ratcheting style wrench type thing here, and the reason that this ratchets is because we're going to put the crimp connector in there. As you can see, those 2 ends, just like that, are lined up with those kind of mountainous areas. And we're just going to place it there so it stays. The other thing on the other side, we want to make sure that the crimp connector actually comes through, and that we're not going to crunch the that little pin that sticks up there, and we're not going to crunch this interior section here. This is where the pin goes into when we attach this to something. So there's that. So what we want to do here is take our wire, and I'll do the positive so you can see that easier. And you want to stick the wire right into that section there and push it in until it kind of bottoms out. And you're not pressing firmly, you're just pushing it in until you feel resistance. At the point you feel resistance, start clamping down all the way closed. Just be careful with this flashing here. It is sharp. I just got myself in the finger there. That kind of hurt. So crimp that all the way down, just like that. And as you can see, we didn't crunch any of the parts on this side. Everything's still intact. So once you're all the way set, the tool will release, except for it will grab onto any wire in the car. So once the tool releases, you can see we've got a perfect joint here. And let me bring out the pointer here. So you can see here, we've got our crimp on the wire jacket. We've got our crimp on the wire itself. And then this section here, where the pin will go through, right up to about there, is fully intact. It's not squashed at any. And then we've got our pin, this pin here, which is still upright and not squashed. So this is a really good connection. To finish it, we're going to take this flashing off. And this is where a set of these crimpers comes in real handy. So we're going to bend it. Let me show you. So we're going to bend it up like that. And we want to cut this clean off. Now you probably could bend this back and forth a few times and just snap it off, but I'm going to cut it. I'm sorry, this is not easy for me to show you and cut at the same time. Yeah, so there we go. That's where I'm going to cut it. Just like that. Cut it clean off. There we go. And that is what our completed JST crimp should look like. And if you follow along, yours should look identical to this one. So let's do one more. So when I do these again, I might speed by them. You can reference this. So we're doing 22 gauge wire. So we're going to use the center one. Place this with the prongs sticking up, just like that. And then push this all the way to the flashing. So it's just like that. Okay, nice. Then once that's set, go ahead and grab your next wire. Stick it in until you feel just the slightest bit of resistance. It's not much. And then go ahead and crimp it down all the way, fully seated, and then release. Pull out your crimp. As you can see, we get a little bit of extra wire over there. That's not a big deal. That just came off, and everything is perfect. And there you go. That's our completed connection. So now we're just going to cut this piece of flashing off. I've bent it to the side. Make sure we're not going to cut our wire that we just installed on this. And there you go. That's our completed connection. For this next step, go ahead and grab your connector. And as you'll see, it's got some large holes there, and then some smaller kind of beveled edge holes. The beveled edge holes are for the pins on the board. So to fit this guy in, we're going to take the black wire first. Not like it matters, we can flip this around. So in the back here, you can see there's a little, kind of a little channel. That channel is where that little pulled up piece is going to ride in. I'm going to put the black wire to the left here, just like that, and go ahead and slide this in place, just like that. So if you do meet a bit of resistance, what you can do, I got a little flat pliers, and you can just go ahead and really crimp down this other connector just a little bit, because these should go in relatively effortlessly to click into place. So once again, we want that little piece to kind of ride in that channel. Where is it? Right there. Just like that. And this should fit in relatively effortlessly. And you get that little audible click. And then those little portions lock into place here. If you need to take them out, you push down there and then pull them out here simultaneously. And that's how to create a JST connector. Okay, so that's a look at the completed JST. And again, if you're having issue with those getting stuck as you're pushing them in place, so the pliers I was using there were the PN 2007. These are made by Hacko, and they're flat-tipped needle nose. And all I did was just crimp that little back end around the wire a little bit, and then they slid in pretty effortlessly. So Anyway, that's a look at the completed motor section. All right, so for this next section, we're going to want the pusher. We're going to want the spinner bushing. This is a 10 by 32 by 3/8 set screw. We're also going to want a 6 by 32 by 1/2 inch screw. So the other thing that we're going to want is a 10 by 32 tap. And the way this works, you got your tap wrench here, and you unscrew the center jaws, and then put this guy in. There's a little square section on the bottom here, and the square section goes into the kind of diamond section. And if you're ever fiddly with these things, know that it's not your fault. They all suck. It's just the way they work. So with this guy, if you look on the side of this spinner, you'll see this rather large hole, and it's large so that your average tap can fit into it. And all we're going to do is start spinning this in, and eventually we're going to get to a point where you can start to feel it giving you some resistance. And at that point, you want to back this out and then run it in and back it out, clean up the threads a little bit, back it out, and then run it in. And you want to go all the way until you come through this little flat section there. Just poke the tool through, and then you can back it out completely. And then once you've backed this out completely, then you can go ahead and either blow this out or just tap it on the table. And then I took an X-Acto knife. Let's see, you can take an X-Acto knife here and then just kind of clean up this inside just a little bit, just so the motor shaft fits a little easier. And if you're ever using a tap set like that on metal, you're going to want to use some lubrication. In this plastic, it's not that bad. You just want to make sure you're not hearing cracking as you're running the thing in. So once you've got that done, go ahead and grab your set screw. And that's going to turn with a 3 by 32 Allen set, or Allen socket, whatever you want to call it, Allen wrench. And I'm just running that in until I get resistance and it's in there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, if you notice, there's a flat section. And on this motor shaft, there's also a flat section. You want to put those two together. So this guy is going to fit right like that, and push it so it's flat or flush with the motor shaft. And then once you do that, run your set screw tight. And you want to go snug, but you also want to remember you're threading into plastic. So don't go too crazy. So now we want our pusher bushing, and we want our 6 by, no, I'm sorry, this is a, what is this? 6 by 32 by 1/2 inch. Pop that right through there. And then you can grab a #1 Phillips head, and we're gonna place this right in this hole here. And they say to snug this up. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. I don't see it going anywhere. Okay, so now that that is in place, we can take our pusher, and we want to make sure that we clean out all the interior edges, because this bushing that we just put in there is going to ride in between here. So now we're going to place this. If you notice, there's a kind of an open section, and this section here, which is not quite square. It's got a rounded section, so we want to pay attention to that. So this is going to sit like this. And again, we're going to put the bushing inside of that slot, just like that. And taking special note of the kind of curved section is going to face up. Okay, so that's how we want that. Once you get that together, set this aside. And go ahead and grab, we want our 2 single pole, single throw switch. These are the ESC11HS1 or the P10864SND, and we want 2 of these. These are stated before, these are a single pole, single throw switch. And the other things that we want are these guys. These are the Pololu 1815. This is a 10-pack of 6-inch green wires. We're going to want 2 of these wires. And we're also going to want these gray wires. These are the 1848. These are a 10-pack of 12-inch gray wires. We want 2 of these. And the other thing that we're going to want is these guys again, the 1901 crimp connectors. We're going to want 2 of these. So what we're going to do with these is hold these ends together, 2 of them, and then we're going to cut the other ends off completely. And then go ahead and strip. I'm going to strip about 1/8 of an inch off the end. And again, these are the, I think these are PVC coated. I'm not sure. They're definitely not fun to work with. And then we're going to pre-tin these. And then we're going to pre-tin the switch. Go ahead and pre-tin the ends. And you want to be fairly quick with these because this is a PVC coating, not a silicone coating. So these will melt. Go ahead and grab your switch. And we're going to pre-tin these guys as well. There's 2 little hole connectors here. Hold that like that so you guys can better see it. There you go. Just like that. And then once you're set with that, go ahead and grab one of your wires and solder it in place. Repeat the same for the other side. There you go. That's one switch done. If you want to test your wiring at this point, go ahead and grab your multimeter and put it on continuity mode. We're going to set these 2 leads on each end of the wire, like that, and then go ahead. So we know that one's good. So I'm using 1/8 inch shrink tubing here. This is cut about 1/4 inch long, and I'm just going to run this right to the switch, just like that, and then hit it with heat. Okay, then grab your crimp connector and crimp these in place. That's one switch completed. And we're going to repeat that same process with the gray. And pre-tin your switch. solder your wires on. And then go ahead and install your crimp connectors. Make sure they're locked in place. So now that we've got our pusher motor switches all made up, we want to grab our pusher housing again and grab our pusher housing cover. And you'll notice that this has a couple of channels in the top. This is actually the top. This side here with the flat goes towards the actual pusher. And you'll see that this has this little concave section here that matches with this the concave section there. So this is going to go right like this. But before we screw this in place, there's a couple things I want to make mention of. As you can see right here and right here in these corners, this is where the screws go, but you'll notice that the screw holes are covered up. Maybe they're not in yours, I don't know, but in mine they are. So I'm just going to take an X-Acto and kind of puncture through that. You can take a drill bit here and do that. I just want enough that I can get the screw through the hole. So, and I'm doing this with an X-Acto because I expect that many of you have an X-Acto and that some of you do not have a drill. So just to show you that it is possible with what people have at home. Okay, so that's the screw there. And let's see if this fits. And of course, it's going to be a tight fit. So I've got the screw started, and I'm just going until it's flush there. And now I got to repeat the process and clean out this back hole here. So once we get our screws in and started, we've cleaned up those holes. Just make sure that they're flush with the bottom here. And now we want to determine the front and the back. So the front has this little concave section here, which matches with the concave section here. And then the back has this wider, flatter spot. So this is the back, this is the front. So what we want to do first is we want to grab our rear pusher. This is the rear pusher switch. This is going to go right here. And that just friction fits right in place. If you would like, you can take these wires and just kind of bend them up a little bit. Okay, and then there's a little hole here. Again, this is the back with the flat section there, the flat square section. This hole here that my finger is just below, we're going to put the wire through that. Just like that. Okay, and then we're going to repeat the same with the front pusher, which goes right there. And this guy just fits like this. Like that. And friction fits in place as well. Just like that. Okay, so we're going to make sure that the back and front pusher switches are in place. And then we're going to take this housing and put it right on top. And it kind of clicks in place. Just line it up, and then you can run your 2 screws in place. Same thing here, make sure this sits flush, and run your screw in place. And then snug those down. Okay, so once you've got those screws in place and tightened down, just go ahead and check. Make sure none of your wires are pinched. And you can also check through the sides here, make sure that your switches are in place. If you're so inclined, like, make sure that the switch, when you hit it, it pops back to place. Okay, like mine are, like this one was kind of tight, but yeah, just make sure it pops back into place. And again, if you're worried about it, you can check them again, and everything is good. Now what we're gonna do is, looking at this front piece here, we've got a channel right here. We're gonna run the motor wire, and we're gonna run that right through this channel here, all the way to the rear and out that last hole here. And you might need just a small screwdriver or something just to pull that out, just like that. Okay, and again, pull this fairly snug because you want that to sit right in that channel. Okay, and the directions will tell you to run this front switch through that same the same channel, which we will do. Just like that. And same thing here, you might need a screwdriver or something to help you pull that out at the end. And just run that through all the way. Just like that. Okay, so that's some of our wiring done. So once you've got those pulled through and all your wirings to the back, go ahead and grab 8 632 by 3/8 machine screws, and then go ahead and grab your 2 side plates. And one thing we want to note is this guy here. As you can see, if we flip it this way, this section here is for this spinner, and then this section here is for the pusher to ride in. So this is going to go just like this. So if we put the front of the gun there, this is going to ride like something like this. Okay, so that's going to sit just like that. Okay, and that's actually where we're going to start. What we're looking for is, we've got these 2 screws here are going to line up with these 2. So once we've got that lined up, go ahead and run your 2 screws in place. It doesn't matter if you start at the front or the back. And these, I'm going to use a number 1 Phillips head. The other thing that we want to make sure that we're not going to do here is don't pinch any of your wires as you're doing this. You shouldn't, because you have them run all the way to the back, but there stands a chance that they could get pinched. So after I run this one in, we're going to do a quick check. Again, just snug it down. As you can see, all our wires are out, and they're not going to get pinched there, so carry on. And in a minute, this thing is going to start to look freaking awesome. It's already starting to come together. Go ahead and grab your pistol grip from earlier. And what we're going to do here is hold your wires up and out of the way. And this is just going to slot kind of right in here. Just like that. We're going to line up these 2 screws right here and there. So we got this one and this one. For this, to me, it doesn't matter whichever one you can get lined up, go with that one first. And it's going to be a little fiddly until you get this thing started, as you can already see. Okay. And put your final screw in right here on this side. Again, snug, but not too tight. We're only threading into plastic. Now it's starting to look like something, huh? Then go ahead and flip this guy over. And we're gonna put this other side plate on right here. Same thing, 4 screws. Run them on. I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera and get right back with you. You didn't miss much. I missed you guys already, so I just went ahead and started these screws. Just you might have to like line up the hand grip a little bit. The difficulty I ran in here, it was tilted up a little bit, so this screw was a little bit hard to get started, but not a big deal. And the front screws lined right up, so I was lucky with that. And then we got the 2 more to tighten down. I tell you what, this thing is starting to really come together. It's pretty well apparent that I'm not going to be able to finish this in one video. As it is, I'm thinking that just if I had to take a guess, we're probably at a 45-minute video right now. So we are going to get probably one more step done. I don't know, we'll see. We shall see. Okay, so that is both of the sides installed. And again, make sure we're not capturing our wires. They're all out of the way. And oh, that looks good. That looks absolutely freaking good. So if you want, at this point, you can attach the front nose using these 2 screws. On these 2 screws, I'm not going to do that, just to keep this thing a little easy to move around. So this may or may not be our last step. I'm running out of battery power. So for this next step, we're going to want our servo extension cable, which is 12 inches long. And this one has 3 colors to it: black, red, and white. And there's our servo connectors on that. If you're interested, that's the Pololu 780 servo extension cable, 12-inch, female to female. Now we're going to need one other cable. It's going to be a 2-wire. So this is going to be your ESC extension cable. We're also going to need a power extension cable. So to do that, I went ahead and grabbed our 24 gauge wire again. I'm going to use yellow and green. And green is going to be ground, and yellow is going to be power. So green is taking the place of my black wire, and the yellow is taking place of my red wire. And the reason I'm doing this with these colors is so that we don't get confused with some of the other wiring. As I had mentioned earlier, there's going to be some similar wiring in here, so let's not confuse the two. So what I'm going to do here, sorry if I'm slightly off camera, I'm going to cut this to about 12 inches long. And actually both of these wires I'm going to cut to 12 inches long just to match this servo cable. And we're also going to grab over here, you've seen these before, these are the JST RCY connector pack, the female Pololu 1934 is the part number. And we're going to make our own cable out of that. So we're also going to need our crimper. So if you've borrowed yours from a buddy, don't give it back yet. You still need it. So to do this, I'm just going to match these up. I've already measured that other one. Okay. And crimp the end. Okay, very good. So, as you're watching this video, maybe you guys can tell me It's been a little while since I've gotten feedback on this. What do you prefer for an edit? Do you just want to see this thing being built from the front to the back with no cuts, or would you rather have like the lull points taken out, like any of the parts where I'm not talking or what have you? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know, what kind of edit do you prefer? Would you rather have this 3-hour long run time with 0 cuts, or do you want just everything cut out that doesn't make any sense or whatever? So for these guys, I'm just trimming these down to about 1/8 of an inch, just like that. And I might as well do the other side while I'm at. No, I'll do the other side after, because I want those the same length. And I'm also gonna hit them with some shrink tube. So for this guy, we're done with this packaging, so I can rip that totally apart. So we got our 2 connectors right there. And again, to do this, we want to leave this flashing on. Where is my crimp tool? Right there. So this is 24 gauge wire. So we're going to go right here. Again, we want the U facing up towards the kind of mountainous terrain there. The Twin Peaks, if you will. We just need 1 wire. So we're going to stick this in there just until we meet a bunch of resistance, or we completely screw up our end there. Okay, so that's where I want it, right there. And then just crimp her down. Sorry about that focus point. Okay, so that's a nice little crimp. Let me move this focus point back so you can see what the heck is going on. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, and I'm gonna nip this guy off. Perfect. Okay, that's that. And I'm gonna go ahead and place this inside of here because this one is done. And again, if you meet resistance here, this is where I was saying you can take these pliers here and just kind of roll these edges in just a pinch, just like that. And then that should allow this pin to kind of better fit inside of here. So it should go without, yeah, there it goes. Not quite all the way, there it is. Okay, so it should go fairly easy. Even that one gave a little bit more of a fight than it should have. So I could have squeezed it just a pinch more. So now, take this guy. We're going to clip this right there. Take this guy, again, middle pin, and put the flashing right up against the tool. Don't crimp it down all the way yet, just crimp it in place. And then grab your wire and just to make sure the end is not screwed up. What is going on with this focus point? There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so we put that in there just like that. Meet resistance, and then crimp it down all the way. Take it out, and you've got yourself a perfect crimp. This tool can be a little fiddly when you start using it. Your first couple of crimps are going to go bad, but after a while you'll get the hang of it, and it's a very good tool. Oops. Okay, so I'm just kind of flattening and rounding this crimp here, because even though you're crimping it all the way, it doesn't like to fit into this housing here all that well. So, there we go. Perfect. So now the choice is up to you. I usually like to, if you want to take a couple of pieces of shrink tube and place them on there just to keep these wires together. It's up to you. For this one, I don't know that it needs it because it's going to be riding inside of that channel. So I think I might skip that. No, I'm going to do it. All right, let me clean this out of the way. I've cut my shrink tube. This is about 1/8 inch ID shrink tube, 3 times shrink. And I've cut these about 1/4 inch long. I'm only going to go with 2. Probably every 4 inches I'm going to put these, something like that. And this just keeps this wire together. That's all it does. It's no, nothing special. So right about there, that's about 4 inches. That's about 4 inches. And go ahead and whack it with a heat gun. Okay, so put it about up every 4 inches, and then I just whack it quick with a heat gun. And now we can complete this other side here. Again, taking off about 1/8 inch of silicone and spin the ends. And the ends is just to keep the little flyaways from getting all over the place. Finally, we're splitting this guy. What the fuck? Okay, so there we go. Focus point sucks, huh? This guy right in the center. Perfect right there. Okay, then I like to kind of scrunch these just a little bit, just so they fit in the connector a little bit better. For some reason, these crimpers don't quite crimp them enough. Okay, and then we're gonna do the green one. Same thing here. Grab our crimp tool. Flashing right to the end there. Oops. So now I'm just going to match this so that the yellow is on the right. Going to put the green on the right here. And just place them right inside and get that click. There we go. Okay. So that's our completed extension wire. And if we put it next to our servo extension wire, I say we did pretty damn good with the measuring. All right, so for these guys, we're just gonna run them right through this unoccupied section. And we're gonna do the servo extension first. Just like that. Take this guy up and out like that. Okay, and then next we're going to take the wire that we just made which might be a pain in the butt to do. It's definitely going to be more of an issue than the other side. You might need your screwdriver the whole way, but it will fit. The trick here is just trying to hold that other wire out of the way as you push it through. And try not to let them get on top of one another. Okay, and that is almost through. Perfect. So next we're going to need the power switch, which is RD111311-2R. And we're going to want these guys. The Pololu, this is a 1850 is a part number, and these are a 12-inch black pre-crimped wire. And we're going to want 2 of these. So be careful with these wires. These have both a male and a female end on them. For this project, we do not want the male end, so we're going to cut those off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip about 3/8 of coating, and I'm going to solder this directly to the power switch. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't have the terminals that will fit. I have automotive terminals, and they're just a little bit too big. And the other reason is to travel with a soldering iron is not that big a deal. If you guys are not familiar with it, you can look up the TS100. It's a very small soldering iron, and it hooks up to the batteries via XT60, which is a connector that this uses to our batteries. And it's a very quick to heat up soldering iron. So if you don't already have it or don't know what it is, it's not super expensive either. You can have one for, I believe, under $100. So I highly recommend looking into that. So I'm just setting this up because I want to pre-tin these wires. Now what we could do here is go through this spade terminal and bend this wire back. But what I'm going to do is just solder directly to the flat side. So I'm just going to pre-tin these as is. Either way will work. This is not going to be jarred around, so shouldn't be an issue. I'm just going to pre-tin this wire quick. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my switch and just pick a side and pre-tin these. And many of you are probably thinking, well, you know, how do you quick connect faster than a spade terminal? And it's like, well, how often does a switch like this really go bad? So I'm not that worried about it. And that TS100 that I was speaking about earlier is it heats up very quickly, and I don't see it taking all that much more time to switch out a switch if you've got that soldering iron handy. And this is going to give us a nice good connection, especially just try that again. This takes a little bit to solidify. As you can see, that the heat has stayed with that even after I let it go and then picked it back up. It's still not solidified. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, that stays hot for a while. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is just throw some heat shrink on that. And again, the inner diameter doesn't really matter that much as long as it'll fit over the spade connector, because being a 3-to-1, this stuff really cinches down once heated. And I'm not putting multiple colors on this because it's a switch, so the wires are connecting. So there's that. Let's go. Okay, well, these are still hot. You can push them up if you need to. Okay, so that's our switch done. And if you want to check it, you can do the continuity test with the multimeter, and I will do just that, just in case. So one like that, and one like this. This is always easier with alligator clips, but my workbench is quite the mess right now, so I'm not going to break those out. There we go, we got a good connection. Okay, so that's our power switch is set. Okay, grab your crimp connector. We just want one. Orientation for this doesn't matter. All right, so once we get our switch done, both sides are set here. Take your PCB housing, and up top you'll notice this switch housing here. I want to put the wires through that, and go ahead, and this just kind of fits into place here, it looks like. Oh yeah, that actually clips in place. Good luck getting that out of there without breaking it. Wow, that's a one and done. Yeah, I don't think that's coming out very easily. Okay, so next we're gonna take the gun body and move all our wires back, except for our trigger wire. We're gonna put our trigger wire, if you notice, the switch portion goes towards the front, and then you see this nice little hole right there. That's where we're gonna put this trigger wire through. Place that through there, and then I'm just gonna capture this in between the two sides just to hold it in place, like that. What we're gonna do is separate our wires by which side they come from, or which channel they're coming from here. So as we can see, we got 3 wires that are kind of on the right side of your screen here, and then the 2 wires on this side. So what we're gonna do, if you look at this PCB housing, there's a hole here, right there, and then there's another hole here. We want to put the wiring straight through those holes, and then bring it up underneath the switch here, just like that. So go ahead and do that with the wires on each of their respective sides. So we want the pusher switch wire, then we want the, that's actually the back switch wire. This one that I'm running right now is your pusher motor, and then we want our front pusher switch also goes, and run that up in there. Oops. And these are, it's fairly cold out here, so these are kind of deciding to do whatever they want to do. Okay, so that's up and out of the way. Now repeat the same for these wires on this side, and these are actually can go at the same time. Okay, so that those are there and those are there. Okay, now I want to push this up, all the way up, and then push it down into place. And one final time, make sure our wires are not caught on anything. You can kind of pull them up into the side. Our trigger wire is up and out. Okay. Okay, so once we're done with that, we can go ahead and take our power switch wire, and we're going to try to run it through this left side where we put our homemade wire and our ESC3 wire. And this is going to be a little tricky to do because we've done this once before with another wire. But with a small screwdriver, as you can see, You can just kind of just make it happen. Just push it its way through right to the end. And look at that. Perfect. And just pull it fairly tight. Or, well, loose, but I think you get the idea. You want to take out any slack and just leave enough slack that it's not being pulled on, but enough that it just kind of sits nice. So now on the end here we have the 3 wires here, and then everything is ready to go back here. Okay, so now grab 2 6x32 by, these are 3/8, and then go ahead and grab your stock attachment. And the way this works is you've got kind of a larger end here and then a shorter end here. We're going to place this guy right like that. We're just going to take this and go to this bottom hole and run these 2 screws just to hold it in place. And you might have to fight a little bit with it, because I notice as I'm tightening on one side, the other side seems to be walking up. So I think it's best to get both started, both screws started, and then run them in, and it should straighten itself out as you're running them in. The other thing we want to be careful of is the front of this gun. You have the pushers sticking out, so don't ram this into the ground as you're holding it like this. We want to snug this guy in like that, and then flip it over and snug this guy in. Make sure none of our wires are stuck in there, and that holds the PC board housing in there fairly well. I like it. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install the DCP board. And if you remember from last time, I did not have the 10K resistors. So I went ahead and bought a bunch of them. As you can see, these are a pre-pack of 5 in here. These are the CF14JT10K0CT or CF14JT10K0. If you're looking at the manufacturer part number. So with these, let me move this out of the way. So we're gonna have to install this quick in here. And if you were following my video and you followed the bill of materials, which has been fixed, you will already have these resistors in place. I'm throwing this into this part of the video because for those of you who follow the bill of materials, whether it be before that video came out or whatever, you might not have these resistors. So that's why I just want to make sure that those are in place. So these should match this bottom one on the right over here. Let's zoom in on that. Okay. So they should match right there with this bottom one. So that is gold, orange, black, brown. And as we can see here, we've got gold, orange, black, brown. So I'm going to orientate them this way and place them all in. And I'm going to try to do them all at the same time, because why not, right? Putting the gold to the left, if I haven't already mentioned that. And it's just because I feel like doing that. Placing these all the way till they seat against the board. Okay. And if you're interested to see the soldering of this board, I placed a link to the playlist down below. Look for the video of soldering the DCP board, in which you will see the entire population of this board, and there's another video down there for the power board where we populate that one. Okay, so this is pushed in and all those are set where I want them. So I'm going to flip it over and solder each. Oops. Okay, check them out, make sure they're set where you want them. If they are, go ahead and remove the legs. That is the completed DCP. I just wish we could have done that in the last video, but it is what it is. So we're going to go ahead and install this right now into here. We have 6 wires down here. And if we look at the back, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires right there. So we want to pay attention to what's what and the positive and negative of each one. So we're going to start with this is the ESC wire. And if we flip this over, this is the 3-pin here. So we've got the signal, power, and then ground. So the signal is white, the power is red, and then the ground is black. So we're gonna go ahead and fit that right on like that. Next to that, we have our trigger. Now, our trigger, we're gonna skip that wire because it's awfully short. Okay, so the next one that we're gonna do is the pusher front switch, which is the gray wire. Now notice we're skipping, I'm going to orientate these the same, like that. Now notice we're skipping the trigger wire. The trigger wire is going to go right in between those two. And the reason for that is because the wire's a little on the short side. So now we want our pusher rear, which is the green, is going to go right on top of the gray. Right there. And push these down until they sit flush. Okay, so now we've got, this is our pusher motor, and we're going to put the positive, the red, oops, right there, and plug that in there. So the positive on the right side, negative on the left. And we got our battery, which our battery wire is this one that we made earlier, and this is our we want the negative to the left and the positive to the right. We're going to use yellow as positive. So we're going to place this one like this and push it right in place. Okay, and then finally we have our trigger wire, and our trigger wire is going to go down here in between the ESCs and the pusher motors. So let's kind of snake that in place. The wire's a little bit shorter than I'd like, but it's long enough that we can access everything. So if I hold this, let's see. I'm going to orientate this so it's facing front, the way it's going to sit, so you can see just how all that wiring fell into place there. And let me flip it to the other side. As you can see, we got the ESC wire. Okay. So if I flip it so that the muzzle is facing to the right of your screen, the bottom here we've got our ESC wires, is signal, power, ground. Then we've got our trigger is the next set of pins. Then we've got our pusher front, is the next set of pins. On top of that, we're looking at the back of the blaster right now. The green wire is our pusher rear, and that those last two don't matter orientation. And then if we flip it back to the left, we have our motor wires. We install the positive towards the back, and then the ground towards the front. And then we've got our power wires that are going to power this board. We want the yellow, which is our power wire. It might be red for you, towards the back. And then the ground, the green, towards the front, or in your case, maybe the black. So now what we're going to do is just kind of push this guy in place. And it's going to sit almost flush with this top rail here. What you want to do is kind of orientate it so that it fits in like this, goes into place, and then rolls in place. Place the board so that it locks into that cut groove, and then just roll it down into place, and eventually it will sit. And it's a fairly tight fit, but you shouldn't have to force it. Once it sits in that groove, like right now it's just below the groove, and it's starting to kind of bind up on me. But once it's in the groove, it fits nice, and it's almost to the point where, as you can see, it's kind of popping out on its own, but it will sit flush. And that's just the wiring below it that's pushing it back up. So what I want to do is just kind of squinch this wiring down a little bit and replace it so it sits nice. Like right there, above that. There we go. That's in the slot, and that fits good there. Okay, so we're going to hold that in place there. So now we want to grab our control board, CTL board. And if you haven't seen the video to build this guy, it's also in the links below. There's a playlist that I have linked where I have the building of that as well. So this guy, as you can see, has got these 10 pins. The 10 pins are going to go into these 10 pins here. You want to make sure that they're lined up. We're not skipping any of those pins. And then once you're in place, go ahead and push this in place. And that's going to capture that bottom board. And it's going to sit nice. All these switches should line up. It should sit flush right here. And then it should sit right inside of here. There's a nice little cut line there. Nice little indentation where that slides into place. And that's it. That's how to put the control boards in. Now, if you're seeing, we've got this guy here. We've got this little turn knob. Let's see. I'm going to push this all the way down. There we go. Okay, so I took this nut off because, as you can hear, it was preventing this switch from fitting all the way down. And notice it fits almost flush, not quite. There is a washer there I'm going to also remove, because I want this not to impede the dial switch here. Okay, so as you can see, there's about a 1/16 of an inch gap underneath this, and that. So as you can see, there's a 1/16 of an inch gap underneath this, and that allows this to be pressed, and that allows this to be turned, and it is not going to come off. And you can definitely tell just by the cogs inside of this switch that this is on. So that's that. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to install the control board cover. And really we're supposed to be installing the SparkFun next, which is the screen that fits on top of the control board. But because that's not flashed, and I'm going to be including that in another video, I'm hoping that it will fit right through this. And if not, it's 4 screws to remove this. And I'll take it off and put that back on at a later time. So what we want for this is these are 6x32 by 3/8, and then we want 6x32 by 1/2 inch. The 1/2" screws are going to thread through the back here, this hole here and this hole here into the stock adapter. And then the 3/8 screws are going to thread through here and here. So the way this goes on, we've got the switch, the hole for the switch, we've got the hole for the spark fun, and we've got the hole for the dial that we just placed on there. So we're just going to place this over here, and we want to make sure that these legs go behind this side plate on either side. So if you gotta maybe squeeze them in just a pinch, okay, and then that fits right on top, just like that. And it sits flush all the way around this side and this side. And as you can see, it kind of comes down and meshes into that stock, just like that. So we're gonna take the 1/2" screws and put them in the back. And again, it is my hope that the spark fun will fit right through the top. I may remove it just to make sure that all the pins are lined up properly, but this is just so that I can put this somewhere where it won't get destroyed in the downtime that it's gonna sit. Okay, so we're gonna screw this till it's snug right there. Flip this over, and we're gonna screw in the second one here. So these are both the 1/2" screws, and the reason they're 1/2" is because they're going through the top and then through the side plate and then into the stock. Actually reverse that, through the side plate, through the control cover, and then into the stock. But you guys understood what I said. Also, go easy with this. I don't know if you heard that, but that started the crack. It's just my... Okay, so next we take the 3/8 screws, and we're going to screw them into the side plates. Now, when we're screwing into these side plates, if we're pushing hard on this, it's pushing this whole side plate inwards towards my left hand. There's really nothing to hold it in place, so just know that you might have to put your finger behind it just to keep it from kind of squishing in. I don't know if you can you see that purple is kind of being pushed in, so I'm going to try to put my finger behind it just to get the screw lined up and started. And unfortunately, it is not starting very easily. Okay, once you get it started though, you no longer need to hold it. And again, go easy with that because I just heard another crack. And finally, this screw here goes in this side. Okay, if you're having trouble with this, mine seems to want to be pushed down to line the hole up. Maybe yours is the same, I don't know. But as soon as I did that, it started grabbing into the hole. So it might be beneficial just to look and see if that hole is lining up before you go pushing it in. All right, so that's as far as I can get today. It's very obvious that it's going to take one more video to complete the tail. And in that video, I'm hoping to mount it to the front nose, the 40 nose. We've completed, link for that is down below if you haven't seen that video already. That's in the playlist for this FDL. So in that next video, I think we're going to get the magazine release and the handguard. We'll get the battery cover placed on. We're going to get that spark fun. We're going to go flash that. And the other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to modify some cabling so that we can test motor direction, because we want to make sure those are spinning in the proper orientation. If not, who knows what's going to happen to that dart. It could be pushed back into the weapon. There's a lot of things that could happen to it, so we want to make sure that's right. But I feel like this is a fair deal. This is probably going to be well over an hour video. You already know because you've been sitting through it. I don't know yet because I haven't edited it. So with that, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and click that thumbs up button. And if you feel like I've earned it, in the comment section below, I have a link to Patreon, and you can support this channel for as little as $1 a month. And again, that's totally up to you. You don't have to do it. This content is still going to roll out either way. I just know some of you like to contribute monetarily, and that is quite frankly awesome. So if you're looking for a way to do that, that's one way to do it. And if you haven't done it already, go ahead and punch that subscribe button, because you only get to do it once, and it's fun. And I'll catch you later. Peace.